Hello and welcome to, pardon me, welcome to the Varietal show. My name is Rory, and if you've never been here before, well, thanks for giving us a shot. This is a show where we play little solo tabletop RPGs, and then we sort of focus on writing off of the kind of prompts and stuff they give us. And then we try to come up with something. And by we, I mean the live chat. So if you're watching this live, the thing that you can do is you can join that live chat, which is already growing its own little crop of potatoes there, where it has Witchery, Tammy, Jumstore, GS, and Zombie Wolf already in there, and you're welcome to join. And what you'll do in that chat is, as I come up with stuff in the game, we get prompts and stuff, you'll help me interpret it. And then together we'll create, or in this case, continue our story of our little gray fox and his floating bookshop. Because this is indeed, I think, the fourth one we're doing of this, because the game is split into seasons, and we're sort of playing roughly around when the seasons occur in real life, although the game has 5 seasons, so this one's a little hard to place. If you're not watching live, though, and you're like, I just kind of want to know about the game, or I just want to know what you come up with to keep following along with the story, down in the description below, there will be timestamps that take you to whatever it is that interests you the most. All right, let me say hello to the chat, and then we'll talk about the game. Zombie Wolf says, here with bells on? Does anyone know the origin of that phrase? My family used that a few times in my life, and I never quite understood where it came from. I do get the image it's getting, but I wonder if it has some specific source. If anyone's going to know it, it's Zombie Wolf, Random Trivia Master. Jumpstore says, I really miss Uncle Kitty in the chat. I wonder if his schedule, it's going to be one of those days, is it? Will change again in the near future. Yeah, I miss him too. Although he does comment on the videos, so if you guys ever want to go back to the old videos, you'll find comments from Uncle Kitty, and he talks to you folks. Zombie Wolf says, I literally just made cupcakes, but I want to bake again. Can't decide between brownies, coffee cake, or Italian almond cookies. Well, almond cookies. Every time. Witchery says, sorry, I was bringing the shopping in. That's okay. All right. Time to crack open. I think you all know what I'm going to say. Carbonated water. With slight flavoring and no sweetener. What we call an elder millennial treat. No sugar, thank you. I don't want flavor in my stuff. Not anymore. That's bad for me. All right. We're off to a weird start, which I suppose is good. Let's talk about the game. This part of the show is called litgames. It stands for literature games, which is my catch-all phrase for the 56,000 names that these kind of games are given, whether it's lyric games, solo tabletop RPGs, journaling games, solo journaling games. There's like thousands of genres of names for them, but they all kind of follow a similar idea, which is they are gamified structures that give you prompts, and then you have to write about them. And in this case, in a Google Doc that we'll all see. And the game that we're playing tonight, this is the, I mentioned this in the beginning, but if you skipped, this is the 4th time that we are playing this game. Sorry. And why is this not framing right? Give me a second. Okay, that's better. This is the 4th time we're playing this game called Fox Curio's Floating Bookshop at Europe on the River. If you want to know more about the mechanics, I have a playlist of all the Fox Curio Floating Bookshop playthroughs we've done so far. The first one we did was their Christmas, which is called Brisk. I'll show you the seasons right here. It's sort of down on the bottom here. We started on Brisk, which is technically the end of the year, but we started it at Christmas. That's when I wanted to. Brisk is, you know, when everything's frozen and wintry. Then Bloom is sort of like early spring. Burn, which we also did one of, is when the forest fires happen, but like not horrible, terrifying, you know, portends to the end of the world by climate change forest fires. It's more like the natural kind of forest fires you'd expect, because basically this is a game about anthropomorphic animals that live along a little river in little colonies or cities or towns, and people float down up and down this river doing sale and trade and whatever else, and we run a little floating bookshop. And we went with a fox. Our character's a fox. You're not obligated to be any particular character. It is a tabletop RPG, a role-playing game. You create your own role. Gives you lots of tools for how to create that character. I go through that in the first stream I did, which was brisk. But we're on to Brimming now. Brimming is flooding. That's the theme of it. I'm going to read the text with it because everything in this is very beautifully written, and I like to honor that by giving people that rather than me stumbling around with my improv on what they mean. I'll just let them describe it. But basically, it's when the waters start rushing down from the mountains, and as a result, we have a lot of rain. And I thought, just for the hell of it, just a little added ambiance rather. Why don't we have ourselves some rain sound effects? Zombie Wolf says, apparently the bell straps were very expensive. It was a social embarrassment to be seen without them. You guys are going to see that I don't have my bell straps on? Hopefully that's not too loud. Just a little bit of rain on the roof to add to our ambiance here. Witchery says it's more wind in the willows than Redwall. That's a good way to put it. It's very wind in the willows. Even the art is wind in the willows. Jumpstore, what tea are you drinking today, both in fantasy land and real land? GS says, can't hear the rain here. Well, I can up it up. Witchery says, you don't even have horses and a carriage, or you're a disgrace. Well, I cannot argue with that. Okay. The gist of the game, without going too deep, I am going to have to review some of the mechanics. I had a busier day than I expected. I'm going to be honest about that. And as a result, I didn't quite get as far through reminding myself of all the mechanics as I wanted to. Oh, Janera's here. Hello, Janera. Good to see you. Are you on break from work, or are you off work today? Anyways, I'm gonna have to remind myself of a few things. The thing that I would really like to do today, though, is get my head around like the bookkeeping mechanics, but I don't think we're gonna be able to do that. I promised I would do that last stream, and I think I did the stream before, and I still keep not doing it. So we'll do our best, but my main interest is obviously to continue the story. The way the game works is essentially you pull cards from a deck of cards, and that gives you prompts for various things, whether it's the weather outside, whether it's, who comes into your shop that day, how much money you made selling your books, whether you're running out of books, things like that. Janera says, I am off work. Dad's in the hospital. Oh no. Well, I hope it's nothing too serious, Janera, but if it is, well, my sympathies. Jumpstore says, in real life, I'm drinking a blend of ice green tea and spearmint with glittering butterfly PT ice cubes and a splash of lime juice. That lime juice really probably sets it off. Witchery says, I mean, the good news is we're never getting sick of this one. So you have a lot of chances to actually maybe do it. I did think about that. This is probably the most evergreen one we do. I don't really ever intend to stop playing it. Okay. Janera says it is a bad thing. Okay, Janera, I won't make you, won't drag it out of you. We'll focus on a happy little fox in his floating bookshop. hopefully there's some peace in that. Okay, so Brimming. Man, this game has great art. I'm going to read you the description of the season of Brimming, talk you through a little bit of the calendar, because every season has a calendar. And then we are going to try to draw some prompts and start writing a story. I already kind of have an idea of where I want to go in the beginning of this one, so that'll help. The Brimming season brings chaos to the river. Heavy rains in the mountains send waters rushing down the river, making her surge. Strong currents sweep debris and unmoored boats away, and the land is drenched. The river briefly becomes a roaring beast, and some parts are impassable by boat. The riverside towns try to cling onto the riverbank and avoid being swept away. Witchery says the art is very Winnie the Pooh. Yeah, actually, you're right. It's got that very, like, Wind in the Willows, early 20th century kind of look. Early mid-20th century. As for the Fantasy Tea Blue Glory Buds, Golden Bell Drops, and Dazzling Morning Glow Berries steeped in the waters of the Laughing Unicorn Cavern. Now, I heard the Dazzling Morning Glow Berries can have adverse effects to the minds of mortals. Apparently they either hallucinate or have visions of the future. How do you tempt that down in your teas? GS says, I like the expression brimming. Yeah, this book really has a way with language. Genera says, ironically, the reason he was admitted was the least of his problems, referring to his father. That's a very man story right there. Like, you put off going to a doctor for ages for numerous reasons. Some, I think you could rightfully blame men for. Some you can't. I don't think would be fair to blame them for. But then something goes wrong where it's like an annoyance they can't ignore, and then the doctor's like, since I have you, what the hell's going on with all of this? Oh no, Witchery is having housing issues. I miss being able to use my computer and my cats. I'm sorry to hear that. Everyone's having a bad day. Well, a bad week. I'm happy you folks are here. Not like literally in the stream, I just mean on the planet with me. I'm also happy you're in the stream, but that just makes it sound like, thanks for the views. What I mean is, I'm happy you exist, and I hope that things get better. He's got a lung infection and kidney issues. Oof. I have some people in my life with kidney issues. Those can get rough. Okay, so Brimming, the season of Brimming, where it's basically when the rain is so heavy, the waters get wild. Some people says I'm having a good day. Well, yeah, because you got those cupcakes. This is one of the coolest features. If you've watched any of them before, you already know all this. But this is one of the coolest features of this book. On top of having a world for you to occupy, like it has a map of the river and it tells you about these towns and whatever else, and these seasons, these sort of 5 custom seasons. It gives you a little calendar of 20 days. I think they're all 20 days, but there might be some different lengths. And then sort of special features in that time. It reminds me a bit like Stardew Valley in that way. So like, for example, we see here on the 5th day of Brimming, there's a night market, which is an annual event where a bunch of people come from out in the sea, from up the river. They join up and they have a night market. If you're not familiar with the concept of a night market, it's just like a bunch of vendors in a field, basically, selling generally counterfeit things. Like this Kirby deck of cards that I have is definitely counterfeit and came from a night market. And then on the 7th to the 16th, the river becomes flooded, and during that time, mechanically in the game, we cannot travel. Now, we're not really going through day by day the way this game is designed to be going through day by day, because that's not going to work too well with the stream. But If you were playing this normally, you would start on day 1, you pull cards for day 1, you go to day 2, you pull cards for day 2, and write your entries day by day by day. Right. Genera says, escapism time. Exactly. Yes, I'm not trying to dismiss the chaos and pain of your life. I am presuming you would rather think about other things. And then within that flooding where you wouldn't be able to mechanically leave, there's a thing called a breakneck race, which is where a bunch of the towns send people on this dangerous river to race in their boats. And then there's some other thing. I'm not going to go through all of it, but just to give you an idea, we have a calendar, we have little days we could occupy and whatever else. And then it also gives us a little bit of a rundown of the season. I'm just about done with the explanation, and we'll get to drawing cards and whatever. But seasonal signs, the river's current is strong, pulls away anything not securely moored. That's how we're going to open this, by the way. The tumbling waters reveal jagged rocks and tree logs stopping travel. Pardon me. I did everything you're meant to do before you talk for a long time. I ate some ice cream before stream, and I'm now drinking a carbonated drink. What else could you do to make your voice clear and durable? That's a joke. Those are two things you should not be doing. The tumbling water... Oh, sorry. The floodwaters are loud for most of the season. That's why I have the rain running. Rushing water is your background music. I do have a rushing water sound, but it's too loud. The weeks are given individual names. I've never really used that, but like if you were curious about it, like Frog Song is the first week. It tells us that we can't travel from the 7th to 17th. And then it gives you some possible things that could happen this season, including everything is dark as death to... this is very cool to me. The floodwaters sweep the scent of rotting plants down the length of the river. I think that's a very unique observation. Which he says, I don't know if ice cream does help me. Does it help you talk publicly with all its phlegm? Skittering insects washed from the mountains by the rain crawl over every boat and house, generally become a nuisance, which is a thing that really does happen. So, like, there's neat details like that. Okay, but now it means we need to draw some cards. I don't really want to use my Kirby cards for this because they're still split up from the last game into suits. So I will use my regular ones. Just shuffling cards here. Jump Store says, whenever I know I'll have to talk for long periods of time, I always drink chamomile and elderberry tea with honey and a splash of lemon juice. It's good for clearing up congestion. I've done the honey and lemon juice just in hot water before when I used to teach, because I used to teach 8 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week, which is in a classroom setting where I would be the main talking. It wasn't a lot of group activities. It was like mostly lecture. So 8 hours a day. My voice is not in that shape anymore, but was quite hard on the voice, so I had to do things to preserve it. Okay. At the beginning of each day, we draw a card. First card, a Queen of Clubs. Second card, 6 of Hearts. We draw 2 cards. Now, this is about the weather, and it changes from season to season, but we're in Brimming. Gennaro says, what subject did you teach? A variety of things, but it was adult education around industrial safety and things like that. Sounds very dull, and I guess ostensibly it was, but I don't think it's as dull as it sounds. I always felt like the subjects weren't dull, the people were dull. Teaching them, like you could make them interesting. Anyways, this is not about that. So They have, I've also never really been able to use this, but they have these like special little, it's just so many little details and mechanics in this game that just, I feel like I never do it justice. But here, when you draw sunny weather, as here, you fill in a circle, and when you do that 3 times, so when you draw them 3 times, the next day a cloud of butterflies fly over the river and settle on any dry surface above the floodwaters. They are various shades of vibrant colors. Like, that's really cool. There's just, I feel like I'm trying to explore the mechanics more because I feel like I haven't sold this game in the past. Anyways, we pulled a Queen of Clubs. So the weather is light rain, customer forecast steady. Oh yeah, customer forecast is how many customers we get in a day. You draw cards for that. And our duration is a 6, which is all day. So it's going to rain all day. You know what I liked elderberry? There was an elderberry liqueur when I used to drink. That was really good. I forget what it was called. GS and Witchery commenting on the butterfly thing. The subtle yet beautiful details. And as Witchery said, that's so stinking cute. It really is. I genuinely, you should get this game. It comes up in a lot of bundles that I would... Oh, I forgot to put the page number in. I think it's 106. It's really well put together. It's obvious that they, this isn't just your average thing. A lot of the indie stuff, they might have really strong mechanics and stuff, but overall they don't necessarily have polish. Like you find that you kind of have to work around some of their bumps and edges in the indie tabletop scene, but with this one, it's so polished and so nice. Brimming, day 1, weather. Light rain all day. Customer forecast. Steady. Tammy says, Rory, you drink alcohol. I drank alcohol. I don't drink it anymore. If you live in Australia or can afford the postage, the author makes something copies too. Bound copies. Oh, that would be beautiful. I've turned on the air conditioning. We made it 25 minutes. We're pretending it's raining and not actually just a humid mess here right now in Vancouver. Alright. Do I give the impression that I'm a Boy Scout? Maybe. That certainly was not my 20s. And let me ruin that illusion now. What I am is probably just nice. Anyways, which is a bit different. Okay, so at the beginning of each day, you roll a d20. Or you can just pick one. And that gives us our opening task, or task we have to do that day. GS says, the AC sounds like rain. I'm easily pretending it's raining. Oh, nice. Witcher says, I think he put on a rain track. I did put on a rain track. That's true. But GS, in the past, you've said like a lot of those sound effects don't come through on whatever it is you're listening on, so that makes sense. Okay. We rolled a 9. Debris floats down the river. You put your net out and try to clear some from the water. It's mostly leaves and sticks, but occasionally you find useful items. What do you manage to find? And there's a perfect example of something that chat can help me think of. what our little fox might find. Let's shrink that. Well, let's do this. And shrink this down a bit. Zombie Wolf says, I listen to the white noise of thunder showers of crackling fire and hearing the rain is really having an impact on me. Hopefully a good one. You know, I live in what could be best described as Canada's puddle. So, like, it's an enormous amount of rain here very often. Seattle ain't got nothing on us. And I still don't hate the rain, though. As I've gotten older, I like the sun more, which I know is like betraying my depressive artistic group circle. It's all about, you know, looking dreary in the rain. But the older I get, the more I like the sun. But I don't handle the heat well, so there's no winning. Okay, let's carry on. So we had steady customers. I've got to remind myself how many that is. Give me a second here. Yes, I know. Come on, computer. You can do it. And then the last thing we need to do is talk about the towns. I'm actually going to decide what town we're in for us, but I'm going to explain why in a minute. For me, I think most of all, I like the light. Also, it's easier for people to get people to come and do things. I recently got a ridiculously good deal on a charcoal grill, and I had a barbecue with charcoal, which I haven't done pretty much ever. I grew up in a family that had a propane grill. It's fine. Propane's fine, but I always wanted to try charcoal, and it was well worth it, by the way. Definitely a different outcome. But anyways, I couldn't have gotten people to do that if it was cool out. Where does it tell me? No, that's the tables for customers. Sorry about this. Like I said, I should have looked at this ahead of time, and I was doing that right up to the point where I hit start stream. I just fell a little behind. There we go. 4 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are our customers for the day. So where did I get that? When we draw our 2 cards at the beginning of the day for the weather, the first card gives us the weather, but it also gives us a customer forecast, and our customer forecast was steady. And it's related to weather, obviously, because the worse the weather is, the lower your forecast. Steady means 4 cards. So I draw 4 cards and I put them in a little pile next to me, and when I have a customer ring my little door, I'm going to flip that card and look at a prompt table, and we'll get a sort of prompt on what kind of person they are. Okay. So the last thing I need to do, which is way at the end of the book. Witchery says, I like the sun in theory, but it burns us, precious. It burns. I know that every millennial has their Gollum impression, but I'm going to break with form and not do one. 152. Okay, so the last time we were at Roost, I think? Maybe not. But anyways, we were sort of in the upper part of the river, but I was thinking what we could do, and you're welcome to object, is I think we should say that our silly little old fox was warned about the heavy rainfall and just was like, it'll be fine with just the one mooring line, we'll be fine. And then he's going to wake up beached on some ruined logs down at the end of the river, either Plenty or Port Imes. And then he's going to be kind of stuck there doing boat repairs. And then when the river really floods, he can't travel back up. So, chat. Do we want him to wash up in the town of Plenty or the town of Port Imes? And once you decide that, I'll tell you a little bit about that town and then we'll get to it. Got to vote for Plenty. Oh, I have. We figured this out last time. I have the tool. Don't even bother. I have the tools. I have the tools. It's not even worth it at this point. Everyone said Plenty. Okay, well, I'll remember the tools next time. Okay. I won't be a daft person next time. There we go. Plenty. Okay. Means I gotta go down a fair bit. There it is. Plenty. You guys are going to like Plenty. You made the right choice. The opening sentence will explain to you right away why you like Plenty. Giant lily pads grow in the shallow water, upon which sits the town of Plenty. They sit on the lily pads. They built a town on their lily pads. The Plenty is a roughly made town originally meant to be a site for temporary homes during the fishing season, but instead it has been lived in for many years. The lily pads sway with the movement of the water, giving the town a slight rocking motion not dissimilar to being on a boat. You'll find fishing nets woven into buildings and fishing hooks hammered into wooden boards. And the buildings of Plenty have been patched up time and time again, each time more creatively than the last. Fishing is the lifeblood of Plenty, and boats come and go, frequently carrying loads of fish. When the wind picks up, the clink of rope and sail against the many masts of the wharf is its usual soundtrack. It's on the lower course of the river, and its notable locations is the Underwater Theater, the Cursed Flame, and the Floating Gardens, which it tells us about further on. Plenty is unaffected by the flooding of Brimming as the lily pads move up and down with the water. During bloom, well, it's not bloom. And holiday tradition for brisk, but it's not brisk. Plenty has some shops here that I've never really engaged with. Maybe we could try to do that this time, I'm not sure. And it has some specific characters we could engage with. It has some special books we can buy, which is more getting towards what I haven't really been doing so far, which is tracking our coins. GS says, how delightful, a lily pad town. I'm nowhere near as poetic as this game creator. Well, to be fair, it's not like you come up with this right away. Like, you sit down and you tweak this stuff and other people pitch ideas and whatever. Okay. Whoops. Location, plenty, lower course. Okay, chat. Keep thinking about stuff we can pull out of the river. I'm gonna write us a little opening. If there's any details you want to add, the gist of it is he gets knocked out of bed after not mooring his boat. Finds himself in a completely different place. So if there's any detail about things you think got knocked off the shelf or anything like that, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll try to include them. It was around the time when... Oh yeah, what is our character's name again? I have it here. Looper Lou Canid III. He's a red fox, gray-furred, because he's older. He's easily overwhelmed. There's a bunch of other stuff here that we've sort of inconsistently aligned to. But Lou. It was around the time when Lou's head bounced on the baseboards of his boat that he recognized the dockman in... what city was he in last? Whatever. The dockman might have been right. About the second mooring line. Yes, it is lovely to see Genera the whole stream. Lou knew, in principle, that the Brimming season was due, and the mountains had been wrapped in gray clouds for the previous week. Still, though, he was a stubborn old fox. It's too much of a genre deviation, Zombie Wolf, as much as I do find it a charming idea. I'm gonna stay on genre with the Wind in the Willows kind of feel. Still, though, he was a stubborn old fox. As his graying fur testified. Trade. Why does it want me to use the A? I don't use the A. Is that a regional thing? Genera says it's hood to spend time with all of you, and then corrects it with good, but it's also hood. Yeah, Zombie Wolf, they had its creepy moments, but it didn't have the Necronomicon. Come on. He was a stubborn old fox, as his graying fur betrayed. He didn't like being told how to handle his floating bookshop. GS says Gray with an A is an American spelling. Ah, there you go. That's why. So much so, he only left one loose mooring line between it and the dock, which led to him askew on the floor of his bedroom, listening to shelves of meticulously sorted books cascade onto the floor outside his door. Everyone talking about what they dress up. The only reason I haven't been dressing up lately is A, I've had nowhere to go. A lot of that was COVID. You know, I didn't want to have parties and stuff like that. But B, I haven't really had a lot of money, if any at all. So that kind of fell through. I have old costume stuff I would sometimes pull up. But yeah, I do like making costumes. He groaned the groan only age can give you by way of aging, by way of rusting joints. He swung the door open. Oh, you do homemade candy for the kids? That's fun. Ooh, Red Riding Hood. GS went as Corpse Bride. That's a very iconic look. What's everyone's favorite Halloween costume they've done? By way of rusting joints. He swung the door open. He swung his bedroom door open and looked at the tilted and looked at the shambles his little bookshop was in. Taking a deep breath to prepare for the shambles. Little bookshop was surely in. The whole operation was tilted up against deadfall, dug into the muddy basin below. Each shelf had tossed its supply of rare and fine books. To the rough plank floor. Thankfully, was only the right side of each shelf or half his stock, as the whole ship was tilting that way and not the other. Nonetheless, he could weep. He could have wept for the creasing pages and scuffed covers of his collection. Down near the front door, what is the name? Is it the whaler? The top wood of a boat's hull? Am I remembering that right? I'm sorry to hear about that, gem store. I certainly never got over losing my pug. I'm looking up boat language here, just a second. Gun whale, that's what it is. Gun whale. down near the front door, where the gunwale had tipped. Am I spelling that wrong, or does it just not like New Worlds? Oh, there's no H. Had tipped below where the gunwale was bobbing. Just at the waterline. Down near the front door of the store, I should say. Well, maybe the boat. A puddle had developed that seeped under the what is the lower part of a door frame called? It's got a name. I feel like somebody in chat must know this. Is it a jam? I mean, is that what a door jam is? That doesn't feel right, though. Sill? Sill's probably better. A puddle had developed. Puddle had developed at the door sill. Large enough to soak into a few books. On the floor. Okay, down near the front door of the boat where the gunwale was bobbing just at the waterline, a puddle had developed around the door sill. Give me a book that he lost to the puddle by the door, folks. Like, I don't know, the adventures of, you know, Bebo the Nut Collector or something. I don't know. Give me a title of a series that he's lost in this. Also, Jump Store says, I made the live stream chat a bummer. Well, I think if you were doing something that chat didn't want to do, they would have moved on. Like, I think obviously people were comfortable talking about it. It's comforting. I wouldn't say that I'm the most joyous stream all the time, but I would aim to be comforting. An unfortunate stream of events. Soaked into a few books from his best-selling, from his collection of the unfortunate stream of happenings series. Oh dear, he muttered. Urchin of the Rising Tides. I think I could work that in as a specific name. It's hard to replace parts of a series. He peeled one of the more waterlogged books off the floor. Between the water and the tossing the cover, which he knew to say Urchin of the Rising Tide, was basically unreadable. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make his first customer somebody who comes there to help him out. How does that sound? Which means I'm going to have to draw a card. We can get right to it. Okay. It's an Ace of Hearts. Maybe it'll be something romantic. It's definitely not. It's a group of school children. They're loud, boisterous, and share a big love for books. They leave a mess but are very charming. It's a very fitting card. School children like to be the center of things. Maybe he rammed into one of the schools on the lily pad. Yes, I think it is. Chat. A group of school children sounds like a good chance for you folks to be creative. I'm going to try and write out sort of the structure of the scene a bit, but as I'm writing it, I'm going to need school children with personalities, a species, and you know, some things they might be saying. Obviously, he's going to agree to pay them in books if they help out. Which I think is the second time he's given away books to kids. He's not a very good businessman, but then neither am I. I mean, Witchery and I have talked about the fact that we just give things away for free. So yeah, like, I don't know, maybe each person can come up with something that they would like to imagine themselves being, maybe. It's up to you. But, you know, they're going to help him push his boat off the thing he's moored on, which originally I said was like deadfall, but it could be deadfall and the back of a school. Yeah, like, are you a little squirrel or something like that? The raging book-bearing communists. Makes us sound so much cooler than we are. What's an animal you want to be? It's got to be like sort of small and rodent-y. Okay. I got one little joiner sentence to do, or paragraph to do here, and then we'll get to that. Luce could only sigh. The enormity of the tasks before him made his back ache, even at the thought. Outside, the windows outside, the windows looked of his boat, looked out onto grim, gray and muddy waters. Foaming and winding, foaming with its swift current. He didn't recognize the coastline. Or it's probably not coast. The shoreline. He didn't recognize the shoreline here. And the dark clouds and the mist of the falling rain obscured any of the usual waypoints, such as the mountains. Or the high oaks. He must the old boat must have been spinning down the swift river for hours. It was in this meditation of misery, the kind that one can only find when consequences are given to decisions made against best wisdom. The old gray fox was startled by the rattle of his front door. Turned his head and perked his ears to see, knee-deep in the flooding of his outer dock, a crowd Sorry, I bumped my light. This one? What is going on with this? My lights are being fussy. I just need to resolder them is what I need to do. Tammy wants a rainbow unicorn. John Mastora points out if that's doesn't know if that's in keeping with the theme of the game. And then maybe a horse who wants to grow up and be a unicorn. I think I think we can still capture the spirit of that by making it an existing animal. We haven't really introduced any fantasy elements, and I don't think the world really bears it that well. But yeah, a little horse that has the energy of that and wants to be a unicorn. Maybe wears a little unicorn hat. Could do that. Some really good little characters in this. Okay. A crowd of young pups in school uniform. A baby Shetland pony, very cute. Let's introduce it now. They were each scrambling to knock on his glass pane door and shouting over each other so that nothing was clear, nothing was sensible. The tallest of the bunch was a Shetland pony. Pale as wedding silk. Two hooves on his deck and two on the deadfall. That had grabbed the ship. Okay, just a second. A friend of mine bought me these lights and they've been very useful. The downside is they are from, like, one of those sort of bargain sites overseas kind of thing. And so wherever a corner could be cut, it was. Which means that the wires are not very sturdy. The tallest of the bunch was a Shetland pony, pale as wedding silk, with 2 hooves on his neck and 2 on the deadfall that had grabbed the ship. It wore a headband. That wrapped under its ears and had at the crest of its forehead a long spiral shell, the kind you might find at the seashore, glued securely. Created the impression of a long, singular horn, much like a unicorn. Jumpstore, coherent might be a better word than sensible. I don't know that they're incoherent. They're just talking over each other, so he couldn't sense it. You might be right, but that was sort of my thinking on it. I think individually they're saying things that make sense. It created the impression of a long singular horn, much like a unicorn. Which it was using to knock, to tap on his window. Lou stepped over the ruins of his once organized shop. Then pulled at the door. But it did not budge. For the water had swollen the frame. And stuck the whole operation. With a grunt, he tried again and then shrugged his shoulders, apologizing by yelling through the window. The children immediately sprung into action. Okay, let's see what we came up with. Jumpstore says, Red Squirrel, personality and nervous bundle of energy. He was good-natured, but very clumsy. Very good. Name Sika. Maybe our little fox is secretly Dolly Parton. Genera says Z, a shy rabbit who appreciates, but I like how we're all shy so far. There we go. Zombie Wolf. Altia. Species Pika. I don't know what that is. You'll have to tell me. Personality, fast reflexes, but extremely impatient, prone to mischief when bored. I think impatient sounds like the leader. But you gotta tell me what a Pika is. Or I can Google it. But I think I'm just gonna get Pikachu. Oh, I see. Oh. Well, this is cute. I don't think I've ever heard of these. Where do they live? Like, obviously North America, but where? Oh, I see. So they are from my area, but they're from the Rockies, which are actually like 10 hours away from where I live. Maybe I have seen it though, because we do have some mountains. I did, as I mentioned before, I've done some mountain climbing. And there are little mice up in the mountains. I just sort of perceive them as mice, but these have bigger ears. Oh, they're rabbits. Boy, they don't look like rabbits, do they? Very cute. Yeah, they really do. They look like a combo of a bunny and a mouse. Okay, well, I have it up here now. They have very round moon-like ears, so I think that'll be the feature. Pulled my hair a bit. A wiggling nose of a small bright-eyed Pika, smeared on the window, pulling up its lips. To reveal, it does have little buck teeth, right? Yeah. To reveal 2 long teeth. And shouted until the steam and shouted through the gas at Lou. Don't worry, old guy. We will save you. Yeah, if you guys have not looked at the pictures of Pikas, you're doing a disservice to yourself. There's one there that has like a little beard. It looks like almost like a schnauzer. Oh my god, it's so cute. Lou thought of himself as middle-aged. Not old, but he knew it was best not to argue semantics with children. Also, at least part of him accepted that middle-aged was a personal lie. He had held on to for too long. Only part, though. Not enough to stop him from puffing up his chest as if he were a younger fox. She rubs her ears when scared. What a perfect little trait. I fear I'm not going to do these things justice. I'm running out of time. This is such a good premise. I'm running out of time. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You are correct, Zombie Wolf. Like, you know, I feel like I don't want the chat to have to worry themselves about like story structure and conflict and stuff. That's kind of why I'm here. But if sometimes I make alterations to your characters or something like that, it's because, you know, everybody wants to be cute and inoffensive and whatever else. And unfortunately, there's no story in that. So sometimes I'll add sort of more negativity or conflict to a character. Well, Lou was distracted by his existential crisis. I'll fully admit that after all that talk about being on genre, this is not on genre, but it felt right. Well, Lou was distracted by his existential crisis. The children, led by the loud... I'm just going to say moon-eared. It's what came to mind when I saw it. Moon-eared Pika. Not led. Organized themselves in a like an army ready to run a battering ram through a castle gate. Shy a battering ram, though. Tammy says, we can't stop already. Let's go all night. Well, eventually I got to pick someone up, so I won't be able to go all night. Jumpstore says, also I just thought of this, but are all the students girls? Maybe they came from an all-girl school? I mean, maybe. We'll see what develops. I might add my own characters in. We'll see what we need. I think I probably have enough, though. Maybe the girls were the only ones who wanted to help. Maybe the boys were too vain about getting their fur wet. I don't know. Shy a battering ram, though. They used their shoulders. The Pika clung to the gunwale and shouted, "1, 2, 3, ram!" The Shetland pony with the seashell headband Tammy says tell them to Uber because you're busy, Rory. They probably would. That could be a friend group, yeah, that's true. Nothing worse than a class of prima donna diva men. Indeed. The Shetland pony with the seashell headband was told abruptly was precluded from this procession. Lou figured they were worried the creature might break the glass, given its larger size. On the fourth charge, I'm gonna change this to charge. The door popped free of its swollen frame, and in stumbled a little rabbit with silken black fur, combed slick by the pouring rain. Dear. By the way, every time I go past 8, just know, because he requested that I tell you, that Smudge, my cat, means he's getting fed late, because normally gets fed at 8. He wants you to know that you're monsters, but I want you to know that he never eats things when we put it down right away. He's the weirdest cat. He'll eat things like 3 hours later. It tripped. On the books. Mopping. Tripped on the books. And slipped on the puddles, landing squarely on its butt. Tammy says, shame on you. Poor baby Smudge. Boy must be semi-starving. He is a weird cat. He definitely has stomach problems. It took us forever to find food he would consistently eat. It's like a very specialized thing. Yeah, he doesn't like eating a lot of things. When he was young, he liked chicken, but he doesn't like chicken anymore. He used to like bacon. He doesn't like bacon anymore. Not that you should be giving your cat bacon. We're talking like little tiny bits of it. But he used to come around and want it. He's very particular. And then sometimes he'll just sort of skip meals and stuff. Don't worry, I go to vets, I talk to them. They're aware of it. We've been working with it since he was a kitten, and he's like 5 years old or something now, so it's a consistent thing. But yes, he like any cat wants you to do it right away, but he'll get to it when he wants. It yelped, and its big eyes began to water. But instead of wailing, it pawed nervously at its tall ears and said, "Oh, I'm sorry." Gennaro says, mine are the same way. The girl only seems to like the juice from canned food and will only take those lickable treats when on top of her dry food. Also hates shrimp. Her brother eats everything no matter how it's presented. Yeah, it seems like there's like two cats. There's cats that are basically garbage cans. And then there's these really, really picky, finicky cats. And they're like, I guess I'll just die instead of eating something I don't particularly like. But the one thing I will say is I've never met a cat who didn't like Temptations. And he does like Temptations. They never run out of dry food and insist they're starving anyways. Yeah, it's like, it's just control, really. They don't even eat it. My mom compares me to a cat because I'm a very picky eater. They're definitely compared to dogs. Like, I grew up mostly with dogs. And dogs, like, I've never had a dog be picky. I'm sure it happens, but of all the many different breeds and types of dogs that I grew up with, 7 or 8 different dogs. Everything from as big and what's the word I would choose here? I can't think of a word for it, but anything as big as a borzoi down to something as small as like a long-haired chihuahua or something like that I've had around, and they all will just eat anything you leave anywhere near them. But yeah, cats are like, I don't know, cats, we have to put water on the table in a clear glass or he won't drink it, which is just nuts to me. I mean, I know that's a cat thing. Like, I've heard that before, that they need to see, like, running water or whatever else. And they're not wrong, I guess, in wild. But it's so weird to be so... I would rather be thirsty. I'm looking for the name of the bunny. What was the name of the bunny, Jumpstore? I'm sorry, I've lost it. Oh, there it is. Never mind. Z-I. Well, Z-I in Canadian, but I know most of my audience is American. Shy Rabbit who appreciates books but hates to read. Oh, well, that sounds like me. I don't hate to read, but I struggle to do it because I'm so fidgety. GS says we have to introduce a pine cone at some point because I nearly broke my foot on one just now. I hope you're okay. Did you roll your ankle or anything? Lou scurried over to the fallen rabbit and checking her over for injuries, said, Oh, my dear. Sorry for what? You're only helping. I don't know. The wet-eyed little rabbit muttered, then pawed each ear in turn. Jumpstore says the bunny is Genera's. Oh, did I say Jumpstore? I meant to say Genera's. I did know it was Genera's. That was the name in my head, but it was not the name that came out. I don't know. The wet-eyed little rabbit muttered, then pawed each ear in turn, curling its fuzzy chin into its chest. So it could stare at the floor. Well, now, my dear, what is your name? Lou asked, choosing to focus on the nervous rabbit rather than the children pouring into his shop. Your cat like to eat my steamed veggies. I've heard this, that, I mean, cats obviously are primarily carnivores, but they do occasionally eat vegetables, but I've never had a cat who ate them. And then apparently some cats really like them. Yeah, see, Genera, people say they're like, cats are obviously smarter than dogs. And first of all, what breed of dog are you talking about? Because there's a huge range from eerie, like having a child in your house, to does it have a brain or is it just a worm with fur? There's a great range of dog breed intelligence. But second of all, cats are so specifically curious but dumb in that curiosity. They get themselves trapped places and then they have no plan on how to get out. And like, I get where the perception that cats are so smart and dogs are so dumb come from, but it just doesn't bear out. Some of the stupidest things I've ever seen an animal do were things that Smudge did. Well, now, my dear, what is your name? You asked. The little black rabbit squeaked almost imperceptibly. I don't know why for a moment there I couldn't remember how to spell that word, but I got through it. Well, Z, do you like reading? Lou asked. Oh, don't bother talking to old Quiet Z, sir. The Pika said, boldly. She never says anything. My name is Lovecraft always said that when it comes to people saying cats are less intelligent than dogs, dogs are considered intelligent because they obey, but if it was a human acting as obedient as a dog, they'd be considered an imbecile. No, I'm thinking about like how dogs problem solve versus how cats problem solve, and like things like foresight. The ability to like understand instructions, like our Smudge, we've taught to sit and shake a paw and circle and stuff like that. Like we taught him tricks. He's about as trainable as any dog, as I've found. You know, we walk him on a leash and stuff. I think cats are more dog-like than people might expect if they've never had both. But like, you know, one of the tests they do for intelligence on animals is they put like a blanket on their head and see what they do, right? And some animals just can't figure out how to get a blanket off their head, and other ones do it immediately, right? And I'm just going to say it. Most of the dogs I've owned were faster than Smudge at figuring that problem out. I don't have a gas stove. To be honest, gas stoves are overrated. And I say that as a person who worked in a lot of kitchens, and I know that that's the kind of thing that gets you canceled among your kitchen friends and stuff. But to be honest, if you look at any sort of research around it, the nice thing about gas is you have a really quick control over the heat. You know, the problem with electric stoves is that you kind of have to anticipate when you need to turn it down if you're going to leave it on the element. But I think that's solved just by taking it off the element. Like, it's surprising to me how many people don't know that's an option when you're cooking. If something's getting too hot, turning it down is a good idea, but it's not going to cool off fast enough. The best thing to do is to put it on a cool element, and it'll suck some of the heat out. Gennaro says, I want induction. Now that depends on how good the induction is, because I've had some really bad induction stoves that I've had to deal with. They're very annoying, impossible to clean. But then there's other ones that are really precise and beautiful, but they're very expensive. My dad insists on gas because he thinks it's hotter. Well, here's the thing. It kind of is hotter. But all that heat is lost because the way that it delivers its heat is so inefficient that most of the heat you use is just lost. It just heats the whole house. Gas is, if nothing else, tremendously inefficient. Okay. I'm trying to remember the name of Zombie Wolf's Pika. Let me look. It was A something, Ateria or something. Oh, I didn't notice, Gennaro, you said yours was lop-eared. Sorry about that. Man. I mean, it's good that there's a busy chat tonight, but I need to be writing quicker. I forgot. There it is. Thank you, Zombie Wolf. I could not find the message. Are you, I guess I should ask, are you doing the English TH there, or is that the rest of the world's TH? Honestly, we're about the only, almost the only language that does the th thing rather than t. Yeah. Exactly, Gennaro. Gennaro says it takes an hour to boil water and he complains the kitchen getting too hot. Exactly. There's been studies about this. It's tremendously inefficient. There's like a romance, and there's some things that if you're really deep into cooking, it's hard to do if you don't have access to an open flame. You know, there's stuff you can do if you're trying to flash off wine and stuff like that. You can use the fire or whatever else. None of it is so essential, you know, compared to, you know, the developments in technology and the efficiency of other systems. You know, if you want flame, I say go set up a charcoal grill. Otherwise, you probably just need heat. Jumpstore says maybe Smudge just thought, what? You question my intellect, plebeian? Guess I'll troll you then. It's possible. I do think in general animals are probably a little more aware than we think, but I hesitate to view that awareness through a human lens. The rest of the world's worry. Okay, Altia. Okay, my name is Altia. And we are here to help save you. I appreciate. Lou paused and smirked at the portly girl with the brindle fur. Peeking out from the cuffs of her ill-fitting and stained uniform. He appreciated her energy. Despite how it may have led her to miss the details of a moment. Finally, with a calm breath, he said, well, Altia, I would like to finish my conversation with Z, but let me say I appreciate your help with the door. I bet, Altia shouted. After all, you would have been would have been koi food if our class wasn't here. Yeah, I think a lot of people, too, have just been told for so long by people like Gordon Ramsay and stuff that, you know, gas is the way to go. But I think they don't know why chefs like gas and don't recognize that nothing they're doing needs gas. We're like, it's a waste of their precious money. Honestly, if you want fire, like, go set up a brick oven in your backyard and do it old school. At least then you'll get very distinct flavors. Also, it's really cool to cook with fire in those kinds of settings because you get such a fine gradient of proximity to adjust the temperature. It's a very cool experience. There was another character. Gemstore, where is your character? In the future, I just need to copy these down. A red squirrel named Sika. Nervous bundle and nature bundle of energy who is good-natured but very clumsy. Well, maybe it's the one that should have fallen. But I'm going to use Sika as the sort of social glue one. We have our leader. We have our follower. We need some social glue. Now, don't be so loud and rude, Altia. You know what Miss Gibbons says. A little... I guess I should introduce this first. Classic mistake. A little red squirrel was squeezing out its bushy tail into the sink, into the bathroom sink. It shouted across the shop and chatter of school children. Why is that one word? It's not one word. Respect old people. Z, the more perceptible. Z's great long ears. Caught the slightest growl and Lou's throat. At that, turned her head and whispered to him, "Sorry." Altia and the little red squirrel Hulu surmised from overhearing the ensuing argument was named Sika? Was that it? Sika. Zombie Wolf says, my Nona has a brick oven fire that she can make as authentically Sicilian food as Americanly as possible. I mean, the American Italian is recognized as its own subgenre of Italian food for exactly that reason. It wasn't like, it gets this reputation of being like cheap and garbage and the old country was better and whatever. And it's different, but the main differences that arise in it as its own distinct cuisine was because, you know, they moved to New York for abundant reasons, and, you know, other places, but like New York iconically, and there's no farms there, and so much of all the various regions of Italy's cooking was defined by the ability to walk over to a farm and grab it. You know, at the risk of running afoul of your Nona, boxed cakes really are not the devil. Because all boxed cakes really do. They're not necessary if you know how to bake stuff, but for people who feel self-conscious about it, boxed cakes are just cakes. All they really do is pre-mix dry ingredients for you. And there's lots of guides about how you can take a boxed cake and make a cake that's pretty much indistinguishable from a real cake made from scratch. Because all they're really doing is mixing like some sugar, the flour, the baking powder or soda or both, whatever the particular recipe has, and maybe some flavor agent. But like if you take, you know, a recipe for a chocolate cake and the ingredients of your average box mix, the dry ingredients are going to be pretty indistinguishable. GS says, have to dash. Sorry, night all you lovely folks. Oh my god, yeah, I might have to leave soon. Tammy says, goodbye, GS. See you Tuesday. Yes, goodbye. Okay. I gotta focus up. We gained a Gennaro but lost a GS. Didn't lose anybody. Folks, filter in and out like a house party. Altia and the little red squirrel who learned loose from overhearing was named Sika. Bickered for control over the chaos of Lou's flooded bookshop. Witchery says, thanks for the stream. Oh, GS is going, no, I'm not going. I have to finish this episode. Or at least get to some sort of conclusion. I really don't want to suddenly lose my streak of doing one episode per season, but I don't know. It might come to that. I'm gonna have to paraphrase is what I'm gonna have to do, which is the thing that you're supposed to do a lot more as a writer, and I'm really bad at not paraphrasing. Everything gets like long descriptions and so on. You're supposed to paraphrase conversations and stuff more. So I feel like pacing is probably where I need to work best, even in my personal writing. I guess I should say it depends on the cake, right? It depends on the cake. You know, obviously, I don't even think you can get this, but if somebody was like, I have a pre-mixed tiramisu, no, you don't. I don't know what that would be, but no, you don't. Like, that's a thing that's very particular and requires a lot of specific, fresh ingredients. Okay. Bigger for control over the chaos of Lou's flooded bookshop. Lou turned his focus back to the little black rabbit. Z. With some patient words, he was able to determine she struggled to sit down and read, but loved a good story. Lou offered. Lou said he sometimes had readings. She perked up, forgetting about her bruised bottom, exclaiming in her whisper voice, "Oh, that sounds fantastic." Am I forgetting anyone's character? I have the Pika. I had the Shetland Pony. The Red Squirrel. And the Black Bunny. Is there anyone else I'm forgetting here? I don't want to forget anyone's characters. Well, you let me know if I forgot something. Eventually, Lou managed to corral... There we go. I'm sorry to hear that, Witchery. If there was one you wanted, you can. But you are correct in that. Obviously, there's only so many characters I can introduce, but it's part of the challenge. Like, I wouldn't run these streams if I didn't want a challenge for writing. But anyways, eventually Lou managed to corral the children and finally asked the only question that had really been on his mind. Yeah, that was a popular belief for a long time, Zombie Wolf. That's not aberrant at all. And there is a little bit of early studies that's kind of indicated that might have happened. But as we better understood how people learn language, it's less and less of a concern, to the point where I don't think it comes up anymore. But yeah, back in like the 40s and 50s, there was a real belief that being bilingual would make you worse at languages in general. But there was also a belief that if you were left-handed, you were evil. So, I don't know. I don't want to give them too much credit. Lots of dumb stuff was believed. The only question that had really been on his mind: how came you on a school day down to the riverbank to help this beached old boat? You know, you should tell your parents or an adult, rather than risk yourself out here. How could we miss it? Pika shouted. You came right through the wall. The little fuzzy rodent pointed... Oh, why can't I pull it on my head? What's the front of the ship called? Oh my god. The aft? Is it the aft? Chat, tell me. I'm fluent in English, Italian, and Latin, conversational in Spanish and Japanese. I know a bit of Korean, Yiddish, French, and German. You know, that reminds me, Zombie Wolf, I had a friend in university who was really into languages. And it is interesting how for myself, I know some other languages, but it's like a constant struggle to recall. Like I just don't have a good mind for learning languages, oddly enough, despite my ability to express myself in English. But I had a friend who was like that, just could pick up any language so fast. Yeah. Genera saying that my dad is lefty. His dad tried to make him a righty so he wouldn't be discriminating. Yeah, I had a boss, not even a particularly elder woman or anything. Like, I would say probably like middle-aged. This was maybe 15 years ago, so like, yeah, not too old. Anyways, she was talking about when she went to Catholic school, they would like shout at her if she wrote left-handed. My problem with languages is my problem with all names, as anybody who's watched the stream before. My ability to recall nouns is just so impaired. So what I'm really good at is I pick up on the grammar of languages like within, frankly, a few weeks. What I can't do, though, is pull the things that go in the slots of the grammar very well. And so as a result, I know a bunch of grammar and can't speak any of it. Okay, well, this is saying that the front of the ship is just called the forward? That can't be right. I thought there was a better name for it. Bow. There we go. Forward is just... Okay, I see. Direction. Bow. I knew that. Why couldn't I recall that? There's a good example. To the bow, to the upward angled bow of his ship. Indeed, it was not just deadfall he had run afoul of. It was an entire class, entire school, built upon a large lily pad. That he had punctured Witchery says stern. Apparently stern is the rear. If Google Images is to be trusted. Mortified and somewhat amazed. The rest of his afternoon was spent knotting ropes to the Shetland pony. What was the name of your Shetland character, Tammy? I didn't catch it. Their little unicorn wannabe. It is funny to see people talking about French, because in Canada, French is so prevalent that I don't even think about it, but yeah. Oh, low. The water, low. Tammy says sunrise. To the Shetland pony, who was named Sunrise. And described themselves as an aspiring unicorn. Who then hauled the great floating bookshop upright and free of any schools. The children even helped him mop his floor. And put the dry books. And put the books back in the shelf. And the dry ones. Anyways. Tammy says she brings light wherever she goes. Well, then you have something in common with your character. Gennaro beat me to the punch. Gennaro, that was my line. Delete your message and make me look original. No, I kid. I have to say I kid because it's the internet. You never know. I think my favorite thing about French is liaisons between words. It makes it very easy to write poetry in French. Not that I was ever very good at it. I really like the grammatical structures of Japanese. I think there's a lot of things we could learn from it. The lettering is a little bonkers to me. But, I mean, that's all perspective, right? Like, it's just really strange to me that the symbology of a language does not associate to sounds but concepts. And I've never really wrapped my head around like that. Because in English, of course, we just have like A is A. Anytime you see the word A, it might have different pronunciation based on the surroundings, but it's, whatever. But in Japanese, a symbol for the number 8 could be pronounced about 5 different ways, completely different ways, depending on the context. The symbol for mother, for example, can either be a very formal word or haha, which is the informal, but it's the same symbol. Children, anyways. In the course of this strenuous rescue work, adults did find their way to the shore and did their bit to help. It was an embarrassing introduction of Lou's shop to the city of plenty. But one that held enough charm. He did not fail to recall it to others later on. As for the school, they were less pleased. And he arranged to stay the entire season of Brimming. Frankly, he couldn't have fought the current in his wide boat anyways. Working to sell his books and pay off the damages. That his pride had caused. Proving even an old fox can learn the trick of humility. Okay. Zombie Wolf says, one thing that made it easy for me to learn different languages is that I'm very analytical, so I always think of the context and what the intended meaning of the sentence might have been. I think I probably land more analytical than I come across in this stream. I mean, my educational history speaks more to that than anything, but yeah, for me it's just the words I can't recall. I can still remember how to conjugate like the various forms of the verbs from French, which I haven't reviewed that list in probably 12 years. For example, but if you were to ask me what, simple words were, unless I see them on packaging in stores, like, Burr or whatever, which is a thing in Canada. I think most people know that, but if you don't, then I just can't pull it out of my head. I don't know pretty much any Spanish. That's not a thing, really, that you see much up here. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things that probably inform that, Zombie Wolf, yeah. The history of Japanese language is very interesting. There's a reason why it came out the way it did. I wouldn't say I dislike it. I'm just saying it's hard to learn. Like, my little English brain struggles. Yeah. Okay. If you're coming to this part of the show, it's because you just want to know what we came up with. And what we came up with here was a little story in our continuing series with the game Fox Curio's Floating Bookshop. And in our game, we have a little gray fox. He's a a red fox, but he's gone gray because he's older, who runs this floating bookshop floating down the river. And we've been doing a new episode each of the seasons in-game. The game has 5 seasons. And the season that we're focused on, as the icon put in your mind, is Brimming. And during Brimming, it rains heavily and the river floods. And so that's probably all you really need to know to follow our little story that we came up with. It was around the time when Lou's head bounced on the baseboards of his boat that he recognized the dockman might have been right about the second mooring line. Lou knew, in principle, that the brimming season was due and the mountains had been wrapped in gray clouds for the previous week. Still, though, he was a stubborn old fox, as his graying fur betrayed, and he didn't like being told how to handle his floating bookshop. So much so, he left only one loose mooring line between it and the dock, which led to him now being spread askew on the floor of his bedroom, listening to shelves of his meticulously sorted books cascade down upon the floor just outside his door. He pushed himself up on his paws, while groaning the groan only age can give you by way of rusting joints. He swung his bedroom door open, and taking a deep breath to prepare for the shambles his little bookshop was surely in, he opened his eyes and observed the chaos. His whole operation was tilted up against deadfall dug into the muddy basin of the river in the river below. Into the river below. Each shelf had tossed its supply of rare and fine books to the rough plank floor. Thankfully, it was only the right side of each shelf, or half his stock, as the whole ship was tilting that way and not the other. Nonetheless, he could have wept for the creasing pages and scuffed covers of his collection. Down near the front door of the boat was the worst of it. Where the gunwale was bobbing just at the waterline, a puddle had developed around the door sill, which soaked into a few books from his collection of the Unfortunate Stream of Happenings series. "Oh dear," he muttered. "It's hard to replace parts of a series." He peeled one of the more waterlogged books off the floor. Between the water and the tossing, the cover, which he knew to say The Urchin of the Rising Tide, was basically unreadable. Lou could only sigh. The enormity of the tasks before him made his back ache even at the thought. The windows of his boat looked out onto a grim, gray, muddy river foaming with its... Just a second. This sentence could use work. Muddy river foaming from its swift currents. He didn't recognize the shoreline here, and the mist of the falling rain obscured any of the usual waypoints, such as the mountains or the high oaks, so he didn't know where he was. The old boat must have been spinning down the swift river for hours. It was in this meditation of misery, the kind that one can only find when consequences are given to decisions made against best advice, that the old gray fox was startled by the rattle of his front door. He turned his head and perked his ears to see, knee-deep in the flooding of his outer dock, a crowd of young pups in school uniform. They were each scrambling to knock on his glass-paned door and shouting over each other so that nothing was sensible to him. The tallest of the bunch was a Shetland pony, pale as wedding silk, with 2 hooves on his deck and 2 on the deadfall that had grabbed the ship. It wore a headband that wrapped under its ears and had at the crest of its forehead a long spiral shell, like the kind you might find at the seashore, glued securely. It created the impression of a long singular horn, much like a unicorn, which it was using to tap on his window. Lou stepped over the ruins of his once organized shop, then pulled at the door, but it did not budge, for the water had swollen the frame and stuck the whole operation. With a grunt he tried again and then shrugged his shoulders, apologized by yelling through the window at the children. The wiggling nose of a small, bright-eyed Pika pressed up on the window, pulling up its lips
to reveal 2 long teeth. They shouted through the glass at Lou, "Don't worry, old guy, we will save you!"
Lou thought himself as middle-aged, not old, but he knew it was best not to argue semantics with children. Also, at least part of him accepted that middle-aged was a personal lie he had held on to for too long anyways. Only part, though. Not enough to stop him from puffing up his chest as if he were a younger fox. While Lou was distracted by his existential crisis, the children, led by the loud, moon-eared Pika, organized themselves like an army, ready to run a battering ram through a castle gate. Shy a battering ram, though, they used their shoulders. The Pika clung to the gunwale and shouted,
1, 2, 3, charge!
The Shetland pony with the seashell headband was precluded from this procession. Lou figured they were worried the creature might break the glass, given its larger size and pointed horn. On the 4th charge, the door popped free of its swollen frame, and in stumbled a little rabbit with silken black fur combed slick by the pouring rain. It tripped on the books and slipped on the puddles, landing squarely on its butt. It yelped, and its big eyes began to water, but instead of wailing, it pawed nervously at its tall ears and said, I'm sorry. Lou scurried over to the fallen rabbit and, checking her over for injuries, said, Oh, my dear, sorry for what? You're only helping. I don't know, the wet-eyed little rabbit muttered, then pawed each ear in turn, curling its fuzzy chin into its chest so it could stare at the floor where it was seated. Well, now, my dear, what is your name? Lou asked, choosing to focus on the nervous rabbit rather than the rain-soaked children pouring into his shop. The little black rabbit squeaked almost imperceptibly, Z. Z? Well, Z, do you like reading? Lou asked.
Oh, don't bother talking to old Quiet Z, sir, the Pika said boldly. She never says anything. My name is Altia, and we are here to help save you.
Actually, I don't think she would be that cagey to save you. Lou paused and smirked at the portly girl with the brindle fur peeking out from the cuffs of her ill-fitting and stained uniform. He appreciated her energy, despite how it may have led her to miss the details of a moment. Finally, that's a little vague. In particular, the social details. Finally, with a calm breath, he said, Well, Altia, I would like to finish my conversation with Z, but let me say I appreciate your help with the door.
I bet, Altia shouted. After all, you would have been koi food if our class wasn't here.
A little red squirrel was squeezing out its bushy tail into Lou's bathroom sink when it shouted across the shop in chatter of school children,
Oh, now don't be so loud and rude, Altia. You know what Miss Gibbons says. Respect the old people.
Z's great long ears caught the slightest growl in Lou's throat, turned her head and whispered to him, Sorry. Altia and the little red squirrel, who Lou surmised from overhearing the ensuing argument was named Sika, bickered for control over the chaos of Lou's flooded bookshop. Lou turned his focus back to the little black rabbit, Z. With some patient words, he was able to determine she struggled to sit down and read, but she loved a good story. Lou said he sometimes had readings, and she perked up, forgetting about her bruised bottom, exclaiming in her whisper voice, Oh, that sounds fantastic. Eventually, Lou managed to corral the children and finally asked the only question that had really been on his mind. How came you to, on a school day, down to the riverbank to help this beached old boat? You know, you should tell your parents or an adult rather than risk yourself out here.
How could we miss it? Pika shouted. You came right through our wall.
The little fuzzy rodent pointed to the upward angled bow of his ship. Indeed, it was not just deadfall he had run afoul of, it was an entire school built upon a large lily pad that he... well, I guess he doesn't need to say this. Mortified and somewhat amazed, the rest of his afternoon was spent knotting ropes to the Shetland pony, who was named Sunrise and described themselves as an aspiring unicorn, who then hauled the great floating bookshop upright and free of any schools. The children even helped him mop his floor and put the books back in the shelf, the dry ones anyways. In the course of his strenuous rescue work, adults did find their way to the shore and did their bit to help. It was an embarrassing introduction of Lou's shop to the City of Plenty, but one that held enough charm that he did not fail to recall it in the years after. As for the school, as for the damage to the school, they were less than pleased. The faculty were less than pleased about his arrival, the manner of his arrival. I know, just give me a second. The faculty of the school were less than pleased about the manner of Lou's arrival. Lou arranged with them a payment plan for the damage and agreed to stay the entire season of Brimming, working to sell his books and pay off the damages his pride had caused. Frankly, he was stuck anyways, because he couldn't have fought the currents of the brimming season in his wide boat. Anyhow, it was that day, the first day of brimming, that Lou proved even an old fox can learn the trick of humility. All right. Wow, a lot of messages happened. Oh, I see. We're talking about anime. That really brings out the messages. If I know my crowd. All right. Well, hey, folks. Thank you so much for dropping by and for continuing our adventures with Lou and his floating bookshop. The next season is basically fall with crispy leaves and stuff like that. So when I start to see that environment develop around here, we'll come back and do this again. And that will be all 5 of the seasons. We will have done a full year of floating bookshop once we do that. And then we'll have to decide what we want to do about that. Lizzie Rose, I didn't know you were here. It's good to see you. Lizzie Rose says, I love the floating bookshop stories. I'm glad you do. I enjoy writing them. I do. It's outside of my normal wheelhouse. I'll say that much. Zombie Wolf's random trivia. Great white sharks are so terrified by their only natural predators, orcas. Oh, man. We have orcas around here. Let me tell you about orcas. They have a reputation they did not earn. That they'll avoid their favorite hunting grounds for an entire year if an orca so much as passes by it. Yeah, I bet they will. Orcas. Beautiful whales, travel in pods. Wonderful animals. I'm not saying that's not true. But orcas, like dolphins, will kill things for fun and not eat them. Torment them even. They are violent, cruel. But, you know, I'm not saying, like, they're bad. They're animals. They are what they are. I'm just saying that they get this reputation that maybe, like, a blue whale or something might have. But that is not an earned reputation. They are not like those. They're not even really whales, as I understand it. They're a part of a different family. But yes, I am glad that you folks are enjoying Floating Bookshop, because I do really enjoy it. I will, before I take off here, just to get a feel for the room, put up a little poll about what would you like to see to play next Thursday. And then it'll be, God, am I ever going to remember the Solarpunk one's name? Solarpunk 1. The Dungeon Delving 1. I'm just going to give it its vague name. Or the other one we did, or Grimoire. Grimoire, the Spellbook one. And then anything new. 10 points to Canada, where we remembered polls. The Dungeon Delving one, I know we've done a few, but I mean the one that we were doing pretty recently. Okay, well, with that, thank you everybody for watching. And who did watch, if you're lurking, that's fine. Thank you for watching. Thank you to everybody in the chat who helped us write our story. You don't actually have to go home, by the way. But you can't stay here. Get out of my shop.